Welcome to Inner Peace with Dr. Reese, a program that can help you become liberated in the modern world. Now, here's your host, Dr. Kevin W. Reese.
Do you have good body wisdom? Welcome to episode number 116. Today, I'm talking to Dr. Lisa Nezneski. She's a doctor of pharmacy, a medication and supplement counselor, and a mindfulness teacher. So sit down and relax and take in this beautiful and valuable recording. Let's begin. Hello, Lisa. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Kevin. Thank you so much for inviting me.
How can we trust the wisdom of the body?
Well, paying attention to your body is one of the primary tenets of mindfulness. And we store emotions in our body. And knowing that maybe what you're potentially feeling is something that you need to pay attention to. Whether it be a symptom like an upset stomach or maybe a headache. Let me tell you my story.
Sure.
So I ended up in an emergency room with a heart rate that went all the way down into the 20s.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pacemaker territory.
I still may be a candidate. My normal heart rate is in the 50s. And so I had this crushing chest pain, and I'm lying on this gurney, and it took people a while to recognize that when my heart rate was dropping, I was having chest pain, because they're looking at the EKG was normal, the oxygen saturation was normal, but it was just the pulse that was showing up as being abnormal. And so as I'm watching this happening, and I'm watching it go from like 40 to 38 to 36 down to 30. And then finally around 30, I looked at my significant other and I said, I don't want to miss my life. Tell the kids I love them. This could be it. I'm thinking I'm getting ready to check out right now.
And how long ago was this?
This was just a few years ago. Okay. And from that day, I decided to really start to pay attention to everything in my life, because nothing was working, particularly, my health. I got a new job. I moved 5 different times over the course of the next couple of years. It was 5 times in 3 years is the number of moves that I had. So, all of those things that are considered to be major life stressors, I had all of them. I had parents pass away. I had a move. I had my sons were married, so that was a happy event. I was divorced, not so happy event. But all of those stressors were going on more or less simultaneously.
Yeah. Universe trying to wake you up.
Yeah, it actually did. And so when I started to question everything in my life, that's how I started my journey of mindfulness. And the 7 mindful questions is an outcome of that journey.
So, I can identify with this. And I would imagine you felt a certain way, not just because your health was in jeopardy, but also because you have oodles and years of experience, yet you are having your own health challenges. I went through the same thing. So it's like other people are looking at you as an expert, right? I'm looking at all these degrees on your wall right now. I got a bunch over there too.
I see them.
But sometimes we still, the expert gets vulnerable, and this can catapult, trigger an awakening, because our ego is being embarrassed, assaulted.
Absolutely. And the problem for me was not admitting that I was in fact vulnerable. I would power through, and I would work long beyond the time when I should have stopped, even just to have a break to eat. So my body finally said, "This is enough. You need to start paying attention." So yes, I've lived through a number of really embarrassing, humiliating things, but it's a story of triumph, I guess. Moving beyond those, I decided that I wasn't going to let it get to me to the point where, in other words, any avenue that I could pursue for healing that I felt was benefiting me, I was definitely going to do it. So I used a number of both alternative modalities as well as traditional medicine to get better.
Mm. And in doing this, you started teaching mindfulness and meditation, right?
I did. That was more or less the end point. I actually started meditating in the throes of this divorce that I mentioned, where my ex-husband was suing me in a separate lawsuit, and I was incredibly stressed out. I still had to work. I still had to function. And so one of my previous meditation teachers did a 60-day challenge, and it was give me 5 minutes a day for 60 days. And I thought to myself, that's what I need to do. I can commit to 5 minutes. And so it turned out that I have not stopped meditating twice a day ever since that point. So it first helped me through my own personal crisis and putting things into perspective, to be more in the moment, to be more present, to sort through all of the emotions that were coming up through that time. And, sitting in meditation, I did get the message, you need to teach this. So I have a background as a university professor many, many years ago, and early in my career. So I have been teaching most of my life, but using the training that I received through the mindfulness certification, it's really interesting to watch how just simple techniques like breathing, paying attention to your breath, how it resets your nervous system. It allows the parasympathetic nervous system to trigger, which relaxes you. It's the rest and digest system. So watching that happen in a class, you can actually see it turn on for people. You see their face becomes less tense, their jaw begins to relax, their posture becomes more in tune with their breathing. So it's quite rewarding to teach it as well.
Any particular type of meditation you're into?
So I do two different types traditionally. I've been doing one type for many years that is more of a grounding and getting in touch with the energy that runs through your body. I was trained through Psychic Horizons in Boulder, Colorado for that. And I want to say it's probably been 10 good long years that I've been doing that one. But the mindfulness meditation, where you use an anchor, breath, bodily sensations, or ambient sounds, I practice that every day in the morning, and the energy medicine in the evenings. So yes, those are the two primary types.
Okay. So you said you use traditional medicine. You know a lot about traditional medicine.
I do.
You're a pharmacist with a specialty in disease, right?
Yes, and pharmacotherapy would be like the internal medicine of the pharmacy specialist.
Yeah. So you know the pharmaceutical industry very well. What would you say is the best way to go for someone? Pharmaceuticals, nutritional supplements, or herbal medicine? Or is it a combination depending on the situation?
Well, if you have an infection, you want a medication for that. You want an anti-infective of sorts. Allopathic or traditional medicine is focusing primarily on curing. or at least preventing a disease from getting worse. So there isn't much on the front end in actually preventing something from happening in the first place. So there's not as much focus on nutrition or nutritional supplementation or on other modalities like herbs, essential oils, other things that have some therapeutic benefit, but don't have the same profile as what you would see in a medication. So I think there are alternatives. This is my own personal opinion. I think there are alternatives in each of those areas that can be deployed to really help people heal, depending on what their body is most receptive to. There are certain snake oil salesmen out there that will just push a supplement on someone. That's not typically how I practice. I use a professional line of supplementation that goes through the same testing that a traditional drug would. It's called good manufacturing practices. So even the line of essential oils uses the same good manufacturing practices that I use and recommend. So when I have an upset stomach, I'm not going to reach for an antacid right off the bat, or even an H2 blocker, or like a Pepcid or a Zantac. I'm going to start with a cup of tea, and I'm going to hydrate, and I'm going to see how I feel after that. So there's a progression from least invasive alternative to most invasive. And so having the ability to choose what might work for you from the least invasive, I think is important to know as well.
I use my dad as an example. The medical industry got a hold of him. And so for the last 20 years, he's 16 meds a day. And, just recently, I finally got him to change up the diet. I got him on some supplements, and all of a sudden his insulin intake came down. And, he's healthier at 75 than he was at 74. And it's like, okay, we got something here. But there's a fear. There's a fear to get off of the pharmaceuticals that have been keeping him going for all these years, right? Cholesterol meds, which some people are completely against, and things like this. So it's a tricky situation when you have someone who's on all these meds, but then they start feeling better from diet change and supplements. And then there's like a crossroad of, do I not take this med anymore and go with the natural stuff? Like, it's an interesting tightrope to walk, isn't it?
Well, it is. And, many people, especially someone who's been on a medication for many years, has a certain faith in what their doctor is telling them, that they're going to select the best product for them. But that's not necessarily the case. Our bodies change. From what I understand, every 7 years, every single molecule in your body gets replaced. So you're not the same person at, what did you say, 75 than you were at 68,
Right.
So knowing that our bodies do change, there is value in having every one of those medications looked at in sequence and in depth to make sure that the person still needs them. And if they do, is it the right dose?
Right.
And then if they don't, how do you safely wean off a product? Because there are some drugs that stick in your body for a very long period of time. If they have, they're water soluble that just transfer out of your body very easily, but the fat soluble things tend to stick. We all carry a little fat around, they tend to stick around in your fat tissue. And once you either start to lose weight and those drugs are being mobilized out of that fat tissue, you can actually have, just still taking the same dose that you've taken for a while, you can actually have the dose of that become somewhat higher than what is recommended just by losing weight. So there's some really fascinating things about being able to monitor someone through that process of change and getting off certain medications.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Selenium is fat soluble, and my selenium in my last blood test was high normal, which is cool. I wonder if it's being stored in some of my stomach fat.
It's possible. Minerals like selenium typically are water soluble as well. So although some of it may be fat, there's a range of things. You've got your fat soluble, you've got your water soluble, then you've got the ones in the middle. So what we're talking about here is a mineral that typically will in excess amounts will leave the body. So if it's a little high normal, that's a hard one to actually hit that. So good for you for trying to get that up. That helps your heart, that helps your reproductive system. So selenium is good all the way around.
Selenium is the miracle mineral, some people call it. So, but my copper is low normal.
They go in opposition. There is a balance between selenium and copper.
Yeah. Interesting enough, I've had varicose veins and premature gray hair, and then I found out that's a symptom of low copper.
Yeah,
so
it's possible.
I wonder if that's the deal.
Well, yes. I mean, there is that balance between selenium and copper. And when the copper's low, typically the selenium might be a little higher. So yeah, it's possible that you may need to do some supplementation with copper, maybe a product that has a trace mineral that may have more than just the copper in it. Copper is kind of hard to find by itself. So you might find a trace mineral that has maybe 4 different minerals with it.
Yeah, and then there's that's a good segue because the cofactors are involved too. And a lot of people don't understand that. And so they may run to Walgreens looking for copper, and there might need to be some cofactors there, It's not like just taking a random B12.
All right. When, you mentioned copper and selenium and zinc are all minerals. But I think most people know about calcium. That calcium is hard to absorb. The body doesn't easily absorb that mineral. So, and same thing with iron. Using something like vitamin C along with either one of those, vitamin D and vitamin C with iron and calcium, there's actually something to putting that mineral into a form that the body can actually absorb. So having them in close proximity in a tablet or capsule, it's not just convenience, it does also make good science.
Yeah. It's interesting because, a lot of people think that they can get everything from the food. I don't know if we can, at least not in 2021, maybe 300 years ago. I don't know. How important would you say dietary supplementing is?
Well, I think the evidence for specific agents, specific vitamins and minerals is clearly scientifically backed. So, for example, we don't get enough vitamin D, especially if we're wearing sunscreens in the summer, or we're living in places like Pittsburgh or Boston that don't get too many sunny days a year. So how important is supplementation? I typically recommend a general multivitamin. I think that's just to have a foundation of all of the various minerals, because we don't really balance our diet we could. If you're not eating the rainbow, you're probably not getting enough vitamins and minerals just from your foods. So, it sounds like you've got a pretty good understanding of the biochemistry of how some of these things work. It's important to, if you have a particular challenge, like, for example, if you have an absorption issue, I have celiac disease, so I don't absorb minerals, I don't absorb fats. I really have a hard time getting things into my body. So it's knowing what your underlying challenge is and then working with that. So I find that those powdered greens are amazing for me. I really feel much better using something like that. It does help. I used to criticize my mother like crazy for putting butter on our vegetables growing up.
Right.
Like, we don't need all this. Turns out mother didn't know this, but the fats that you put onto vegetables actually help the minerals get absorbed better.
That's right.
So she kind of fell into that backwards. She just liked the taste of butter, to be honest. But there really was a good nutritional reason to do that.
And, some people say, have a stick of butter a day, keep a doctor away, a grass-fed butter. But this is a good segue to veganism, because there's a lot of really hardcore vegans out there who, they're not going near butter. They're not going near fish. They're not going near any of that. I was vegan for 10 years.
Okay.
And my essential fatty acids went into the tank.
Sure.
And that raised my CRP.
Right.
And so that was scary. And, my naturopath was like, you ready to eat fish? Because that's where we make the joke with vegans. Where do you get your protein? Where do you get your protein? But I think it might need to be, where do you get your essential fatty acids?
That's a very important point that you're making here about that the fatty acids themselves, not only, with the C-reactive protein that you mentioned, the CRP, your skin health gets really you can tell the difference in skin of someone who's eating essential fatty acids and someone who isn't. So I agree with you. I think that's an important consideration. I think vegans that choose to live that particular lifestyle need to pay attention to not only fatty acids, where they're getting their protein, but also the B vitamins that typically come through red meats that, of course, they're not eating. So folate and B12. And in fact, the methyl versions of each of those are actually much easier for the body to use and absorb.
Yeah, indeed. I had to take a B12 supplement because that was in the tank too.
Yeah.
So it was embarrassing because I have a PhD in nutrition. But I was hardcore vegan, and it happens. So I think vegans need to really think about supplementing.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think that there are other fad diets now. I don't know if they're as nutritionally sound as some of the others. There's some keto diets. There's some paleo keto. There's all kinds of interesting things that come down year after year. They're trends. There was Whole30 there for a while, and so each one of those, every diet has something missing in it. So whatever you choose to be the lifestyle and diet that you eat, if you're really concerned about that, you should pay attention to what might you be missing.
Why aren't medical doctors, physicians, I feel like we should be just calling them physicians, because there's many types of doctors.
Yes.
Why aren't they trained in nutrition enough? Like, why can't they sit there with their patient, and be like, all right, we got to get your copper up and we're going to put you on this supplement. And, what you just said about B12, why don't they pass this info on to their patients?
I think that's a rhetorical question. I don't know that I can answer that. I know that in medical school, there's a very short amount of time that they spend in teaching about nutrition. Many of the functional medicine practitioners who are physicians on their own do additional studying and training. So it's not part of the traditional medical school training. And it may just be that they're trying to jam so much in a short period of time. And, you come in with no knowledge and you leave with at least the rudimentary skills to go out and treat some of the more common problems. So, and that's why specialists are there as well. But I think that we really see the results, or the consequences is a better word, of not teaching people about nutrition with the entire pandemic situation. Our country fared much worse than many others that put an emphasis on good nutrition and health prevention. So what was embarrassing for me was that we had this false sense of that we know what we're doing. We don't know what we're doing. Clearly, we weren't as good as we thought we were. So hopefully there's some lessons to be learned from going through this pandemic that have to do with both the medical system and the way that we treat patients and the way that we help them.
Because if we watch television for just an hour, I mean, we can count how many pharmaceutical commercials there are. Mm-hmm. It gets depressing at a certain point because you got the guy dancing and it's like this fun imagery. And then at the end, it's like, if you take this, you could, bleed out of your booty. It's like, are we really that sick? Is America really that sick that we need to be on so many pharmaceuticals?
That's a good question. I think there's a balance between what is necessary and what is overkill. Is it really that they're prescribing because there's a medical reason, or am I going to get sued if I don't prescribe this because this is the quote standard of practice?
Right.
So, is it personal preventive prescription that, I'm going to do this because that's the standard of practice? So I don't know. It's possible.
Yeah. I guess what I'm trying to say is there's no commercials for copper and selenium.
Right. You're right about that. There is some. You'll see,
multi here and there.
Yeah. Some calcium supplementation, some garlic supplementation, certain household brand names that have enough of that are owned by larger pharmaceutical companies that have enough to be able to advertise. Those are the ones that you see, but you're not going to see a multivitamin unless it's like, Chalks for Kids, which that's showing my age, but some multi that's not really aimed at the general populace.
Right. Could it be the pharmaceutical companies, they're just super rich, so they're advertising over and over and over and over?
Sure.
Again?
That is certainly a huge part of it. And I think that from my experience in the long time being affiliated with and working with pharmaceutical companies, they don't do anything if it doesn't have a positive profit motive, So they're advertising because it works. So people are going to their doctors and asking for whatever it is they saw on TV.
Interesting. But there's a younger generation that, because of the internet, they may not even go to a doctor, or they go to a naturopath, or
Mhm.
They just handle it themselves. So some things are changing a little bit, I think.
I think so.
Mindfulness has entered into the medical industry a little bit. I remember having high blood pressure many years ago, and my doctor being like, "Oh, yeah, you might want to look into mindfulness." And I'm like, "You know about mindfulness? They didn't teach you that in med school." Like, no, but you might want to try it. I mean, so many people could benefit from mindfulness if it was integrated into the system. Can you see a day when it gets integrated into the medical system? They're gonna have to change at some point, aren't they not?
Well, yes. I think it's actually going to start in the schools. There are a number of the colleagues that went through the training program with me were school teachers of sorts, school teachers, school administrators, and beginning at a younger age, having children understand how to manage their emotions, how to be able to self-regulate the emotions, how to calm down, how to behave in a stressful situation. And as they grow with that, it will make an impact on the medical system for sure. So the mindfulness-based stress reduction, which is an offering that many psychologists have, is mainstream now. Back 20, 25 years ago when John Kabat-Zinn and the group up in Harvard had brought that from the Southeast Asia to the US, they were the pioneers. They gave them a little hole in the basement to practice, and they started to see results. And that's really what's interesting to me is the studies that are being done. Recently, I read something about a study done on loving kindness. Loving kindness is sending positive thoughts to someone that you might know, someone that you don't know at all. It could be a beloved person, and maybe a spouse, someone that you've had difficulty with. So there's 4 or 5 groups of people that you doing this practice of sending loving kindness. May you be happy, may you be healthy, may you no harm come to you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It is very much like a prayer. And so they took meditation naive people, and there were 3 groups. There was a control group. There was a group that practiced traditional mindfulness with an anchor of breath, bodily sensations or ambient sounds. And the 3rd group practiced loving kindness. And what they measured as a result were the length of the telomeres, which are the end caps of the DNA. Mm-hmm. And so the loving kindness slows your aging. That was the results of the study. So I can certainly send that to you if you're interested. But it was the most profound change, statistically significant, all the variables that we look for in a good study. It had a control group. It had, option. So it seemed to be very well organized study, and the results were profound. So practicing loving kindness, praying for people, helps you slow down your aging.
This is like epigenetics.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. We have so much power with this mind. It's our greatest gift and our greatest enemy. And we have to decide if it's going to be the gift or the enemy somewhere in our life, because it can take somebody down, and it can raise somebody up. How would you best slow down thoughts? What's the best practice to slow down thoughts?
So your brain is always going to secrete thoughts, just like your mouth secretes saliva. So you're all, that's its function. But recognizing that you're having a thought and naming it, like, oh, this is thinking, that takes the charge off of it. Naming the thought actually takes the charge off of it. And so there's a number of different ways that you can approach thoughts that happen during a meditation session. So you could welcome them in like they're a welcome visitor. In other words, you're mentally opening your door, asking them to come in and have a seat.
Yep.
You can use a figure 8 in your breathing. So on the inhale, you rise to the top of the 8, and then the exhale back down. So just focusing on your breath going in a figure 8 will bring you back from thinking. Naming is another way. Like I said, oh, this is a thought. This is a thought. You don't have to follow that thought. We're used to following thoughts, but you don't have to. It's a choice.
Can we be specific with naming the thought?
Oh, absolutely.
I heard one master say, I think he got it from the Buddha himself. I think it's a Vipassana technique where you actually label it. So if you hear a car, you say, oh, it's a car, it's a car. Yeah, if you have a thought of fear, you say, oh, that's fear.
Yes, exactly. The more specific that you can be, it sort of puts it into perspective where you don't necessarily have to follow that thought. Just allow it to pass on. A lot of people talk about the sitting on the bank of the river and watch the thought flow down the river. Mine always flow from right to left. I don't know what that means yet, but that my thoughts, my leaps on the river flow from right to left. So I have this mental image of it just flowing off. Sometimes, maybe some of your listeners don't remember the cartoons where, wavy lines would happen, when they did a flashback. So sometimes when you actually name it, my thoughts will do the wavy line thing and just sort of dissipate and flow away. What I tell my students is that if it's really an important thought, you will think it again. You don't need to worry about stopping your meditation to go and handle something. If you're in meditation for the experience, have the experience, and at the next right time, that thought will come back to you.
What if it's a negative thought?
Mm-hmm.
Could that be a red flag to perhaps cleanse an emotion of some kind?
Oh, clearly. Yeah. A negative thought. You can ask yourself, is this true? Or you can sit with that thought and say, where do you live in my body? And what do you need right now? That's sort of a RAIN technique of investigating where it is. RAIN being recognize, allow, investigate, nurture, which is another type of mindfulness investigation of emotion.
Say that's like inner child stuff or reparenting.
It could be. It could be, yes. There's a number of ways to think of it. Yeah. That particular technique I was taught by Tara Brach. So she recommends RAIN, or even having a RAIN partner that helps you process whatever that emotion is by asking you those questions, giving you a period of time to just sort of investigate and allow that emotion and feeling to occur. And then when you get to the nurture part of it, that's where the inner parenting comes from, where it's like, what do you need right now? What can I provide for you? You're okay, Mm-hmm. So, I think all of those are all valid techniques.
Yeah, it's helped me quite a bit. First and foremost, you have to watch. That's the crux of the whole thing. Some people do not understand that at all. You say, oh, you got to watch your thoughts and emotions. And they're like, watch my thoughts and emotions. How can I watch my thoughts and emotions? Because they're caught in the dream. Like they're caught on that river and they're just going down.
Exactly. And they're helping paddle.
Right. And so what we're doing, you, I, and everyone else who practices mindfulness, is we're watching. Actually, watchfulness is probably a better term, but mindfulness.
Yeah, I use awareness. Yeah.
Awareness is the ultimate term, I think.
Mm-hmm.
When we have awareness of our thoughts and our emotions, then we can do something about it.
We can. And that really is the very first question of the 7 mindful questions. What am I doing right now? When you're kind of caught in a highly emotionally charged situation, you've got to get some things done. You just break that cycle by saying, what am I doing right now? What is it that I'm doing? Investigating it. And why am I doing this? Is there a reason behind it? So it's awareness and because. And then finally, do I care about this? Is this really something I care about? So that's the ABC, the first 3 questions. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? Why do I care about this? And then it's pause and breathe. So that's the middle section of the 7 mindful questions that resets your nervous system and gives you that space when you're breathing for something better to come in. And then the last 3 questions have to do with choosing a better alternative. So bringing your actions in line with your personal core values so that you really are just working on what's important to you. And the rest of it sort of falls away. So that's the 7 mindful questions in a nutshell.
And what are specifically 5, 6, and 7? Or 6, 7?
Okay.
8?
So pause and breathe. What is essential? That's 4. Then choose. What is it that I should be doing? The choice is, question number 5 is really the emotional heart of the 7 mindful questions, where when you're making these choices, it's how am I feeling about those choices? So choose better. What is better for me to do right now? And what is the best alternative? So those are the last 3 of the 7 questions.
So if someone was experiencing, let's say, fear,
Yes.
when they got to that question, it would be, well, what can I do better than just sit here and dwell on the fear?
Yes, exactly.
Call a friend or mow the lawn or whatever. Yeah.
Right. So some of that, what you're talking about is having the resources, choices to move beyond whatever that particular emotional situation. That doesn't come in the first time you do the 7 questions. It's a practice, just like other mindfulness practices. And the more you practice, the better you get at using those techniques and having the resources to pull yourself further along.
Fear is a big one. There's a lot of people out there with anxiety. Do you?
Right. So anxiety is thoughts in the future. Depressions are thoughts in the past. Right. So anxiety, thoughts in the future. If you pull yourself, what am I doing right now? You are in the present, and that's where life is, rather than at some point in the future. So that's really what helps me in particular, because I run these questions like all day long and use them in many different ways to plan quarters, plan a week, plan a day, plan what I'm doing right now. So, yeah.
Is it safe to say that your life has completely changed since this practice?
Oh my goodness. You would not have recognized me. So not the fact that my hair is shorter and I'm 60 pounds less. I live a completely different lifestyle right now, much more in tuned to what my body needs, feeding my body appropriately, hydrating. There are some really basic self-care things that I practice all the time. And one of them is making sure that I'm well hydrated, that I'm eating appropriately, that I'm exercising. Paying attention to sleep is so important. So I don't really care that people think that I'm a geriatric if I go to bed at 8:30 every night. I just don't care. My body needs that. And then the last one that we don't think about is unplugging from devices.
That's yes.
So at a certain point at night, the devices go off and I'm reading a book. And then I'm meditating and then I'm off to dreamland. So yeah, sleep hygiene is so important for our overall health.
Any other sleep tips?
Yes. try to make your routine to go to bed somewhat fixed. So you just have habits, create a habit around how you go to bed at night. At a certain time, the TV, the devices go off, you go up to bed, you either take your bath or whatever you do, to prepare for bed, wash your face, brush your teeth, those kinds of things done consistently. And then have something to help you wind down, whether it's reading or listening to music, listening to a podcast, something where you can just really just wind down. For me, it's an energy-based meditation where I run energy through my body and get rid of what extra I didn't need from the day. And then, as I said, I'll just drift right off after that.
How long is that meditation?
They're typically anywhere between 20, 25 minutes to 45. 45 is the longest. I'm usually asleep by 20 minutes. So.
Okay. So the meditation leads right to sleep.
Exactly. Sleepitation is what one of my teachers used to call it, and said, it's fine. Your body needed that. So if you fall asleep during meditation, that's fine.
I like to keep the room cold too.
Okay.
Yeah, sleep is a thing. Anyone that's ever pulled an all-nighter before knows what it's like the next day.
Yeah. Occasionally I'll get pains in my hips and my shoulders, and I just cannot get comfortable lying down. And there was a spot at the end of July where I went like 48 hours with no sleep. And that triggered an autoimmune flare-up. And that triggered, so it just is a cascade of events that, today's the first day I really feel pretty good after, it's probably been about a month.
Yeah. So yeah, two nights with no sleep, huh? I've been there. I've been there. It's a dazed feeling.
Yeah, it is. I won't do any I do a lot of analysis and computations for my day job. So I just won't do that, because I know I'll be making mistakes. I'll have to redo it anyway. So, I do have the luxury of being able to plan my own schedule and work from home. So not many people can do that. But I'm very grateful for that opportunity, because it has helped my healing process move forward, because I'm able to gauge how it is that I'm feeling in the moment and then make adjustments.
The thing with no sleep is that the mind messes with you too. And so thank goodness for mindfulness, I guess, because if one doesn't have the practice of mindfulness, then those thoughts can really mess with you. And there could be fear based on, what if I don't sleep for a third night? What if I don't sleep?
True.
What if I don't sleep for a fourth night? Am I an insomniac now? What does this mean? Do I need medicine? What happens? And the mind just messes with you.
Yeah.
So
I can relate to that prior to, my meditative practice, that would definitely happen. There'd be something at work or whatever, a conversation that didn't go the way that I wanted it to. I didn't handle it very skillfully. And then you're guilting yourself, and I got myself into this problem. And, it can really spiral. But you're right. I mean, so that's when what am I doing right now? Why am I doing it? And do I care about this? Those first three questions can break those cycles.
What if you do care about it, though?
If you do, then the pause and breathe comes next. Allow a better solution to come in. That pause and that breathe gives that space. And the space is so important.
Yeah. Something that a lot of people don't talk about is the emotions. We talk about thoughts all the time, right? The science of thoughts and how we're not our thoughts. Emotions are more powerful, I feel. when fear actually pops up in the body, or anger pops up in the body, or guilt. Whew. So, are there techniques for releasing emotions? Because we might have something from 20 years ago just sitting there.
And it inconveniently pops up at a time that you would have preferred it not show up at this particular point in time. I'm pretty good at compartmentalizing, so that I'll say, okay, I will handle this later. And then I'll sit with it in meditation and just feel into it, lean into that feeling. And what else do I need to know about this? And I'll just let it sit there and figure out, oh, well, this happened, X number of years ago, and I'm still carrying this around, and why am I still carrying this around? Is there a purpose to having this particular emotion at this particular time? What is my body trying to tell me?
Right.
So yeah, listening, awareness. What was the term that you used instead of awareness?
Watchfulness.
Watchfulness. I like that. Yes. Watching what it is that your emotion is attempting to get your attention about.
Is this how you stay grounded in the middle of chaos?
That's the title of my first book. Yes, that, as well as a true connection to the surface of the earth, standing barefoot on the earth when I needed to. I actually was living in a beach house. So I was walking the beach barefoot for a year of intense healing, day after day after day. So yes, just feeling into my place on the earth in this time and understanding that I'm here for a reason. That's my grounding. I'm here for a reason, and I'm connected to the earth.
What is the essence of grounding or earthing, getting your feet on the grass of the beach?
You really have an energetic connection with Mother Earth. We are of the earth. Our bodies are of substances that came from the earth. And whether we recognize it as in that same form, obviously it's different. We're in a human form at the moment. The energetics of the minerals, the water, the atmosphere we're breathing in, they're all still of the earth. So getting back in touch with that basic essence allows you to release energy back to the earth through your feet. You can allow things to leave your body that you don't need any longer. Grounding brings you back to your body. I lived many, many, many years in my head because it suited me professionally to be thinking and operating from that cognitive above. If I could just have a head, I would be functioning just fine. But now it's attached to the rest of this.
Yeah.
What do I do with this? Not paying attention to my body. So being grounded brings you back, body, mind, and spirit in the same location at the same time, which is really an essence of mindfulness.
Right. So where can folks buy your books and come say hi and learn more about you?
So I am on Amazon. You can find 7 Mindful Questions on Amazon right now. The 7 Mindful Questions workbook for the exercises and the meditations it's coming. It's at the editor. If you purchase 7 Mindful Questions, you have a link to all of the meditations that are in the book that are recorded. That's all free bonus for purchasing the book. Grounded in Chaos is also out on Amazon. It's a highly emotionally raw emotional story. I want to preface, if you're not in the right mood to really read through something that is highly emotional, I just want to put that disclaimer out there. It might not be the best thing. If you want something like a happy beach read, it's not that.
Right.
I have a website, www.lisanezneski.com. It's LISANEZNESKI. Neski. And that's usually where I keep all of my, you can contact me through there. You can find out what's happening as far as classes that I'm teaching, or contact me if you'd like me to review your medications and supplements. So yeah, that's home base for everything.
Great. Well, it was a pleasure talking to you today.
You too. This was enjoyable. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Inner Peace with Dr. Reese. If this episode opened your heart, feel free to share on social media and tell your loved ones. Also, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, may peace be with you.